We've also got of course, the prefect that you can see on the screens, and we do have the mob tutor. I've actually just met earlier in the background one of the team members of the mob tutor display team. How cool is this? This is the home also of the Royal Air Force tutor display team now. It did used to be Wittering as well. Ted is here, don't worry, Ted's here. He will be making an appearance. We've got another two. We've got another two cross. Actually, do you know what? Even though I always contact and let those know that I am here. It's still nice that members of the public and others actually made a call. So that was kind of cool. So there we go. So this is a very, very busy station. I repeat, it is dubbed as the busiest Royal Air Force station in the country. And you'll find out why in just a moment. It is pretty much non-stop, but I will have to take a little break, and I will just have to leave the camera static. I mean, I can get bed set and the other bears too, but have a go.
Same outfit that's been
don't
running
worry,
influence operations and election interference and assassination campaigns all across Europe. They've been quietly living inside your router. Not your computer, your router, your internet box. A little box that you would try to ignore in the corner of your office that makes the internet work. And they've been there since at least 2023, and you had no idea. The FBI and the DOJ just disrupted a GRU network of compromised small office and home office routers that the Russians were using to run DNS hijacking operations. Here's what that means in plain English. Your router's the first thing your devices talk to when they go online. It tells your phone and your laptop where to find websites, email servers, everything. The GRU's Unit 85th GTSSS, also known as APT-28, Fancy Bear, or Forest Blizzard, was changing the DNS settings on compromised routers to redirect that traffic through servers they control. Every lookup, every domain funneled through Moscow's eyes first. They specifically targeted Microsoft Outlook web access to set up an adversary in the middle attack against encrypted traffic. It means if a user clicked past a certificate warning, the Russians could see that traffic completely unencrypted. Passwords, authentication tokens, emails, web browsing, all of it normal.
57 Squadron doing the carrying out.
Okay. Article sent over in response to what Chuck is talking about here. Okay. So to answer that question, I'm just going to read this. I have no idea. I'm just reading. Class was listening to Chuck. Someone asked a question. Someone else who heard their question, who can't send this to them. See, they got the question. It's third party. Right, so do you understand that? Right, so they're sending me this to read to whoever just asked the question from that class. I don't know who the fuck they are. I could be talking to myself. Is that okay? If that makes me crazy, fine. I know how to use a butter knife. Anyways, so to answer that question, there are no official permanent U.S. military bases or government security forces operating inside of Russia, as both nations rely on separate Council on Foreign Relations analysis. You can click on the Council on Foreign Relations analysis. That'll bring you up a whole bunch of other articles there. And they also rely on separate counsel on foreign relations analysis and lack the mutual defense alliances that typically govern such deployments. Seems mindless, but it actually really is a powerhouse sentence there. However, American security and military presence in the region has manifested in a few specific contexts. PMCs, which are private military contractors, individual American contractors and volunteers, have operated within the internationally recognized borders of Russia, such as the Kursk region, has personnel under contact with Ukrainian forces, drawing sharp condemnation from the Russian Foreign Ministry. American private military contractors are in Kursk. You can click on that as well, where it says American private military contractors are in Kursk. You can click on that. Okay, NATO border deployments. While not inside Russia, the U.S. maintains a rotational presence of approximately 75,000 to 105,000 military personnel in Europe. Where are U.S. military forces deployed in Europe? This includes special operations contingencies stationed in NATO countries and allied states directly bordering Russia, such as the Baltic states and Poland. You can go ahead and click on that too. U.S. Special Operations Forces have quietly moved onto the ... Click on that. Syria deconfliction. U.S. security forces operating in northeastern Syria occasionally engage in operational deconfliction and have previously directly engaged Russian emergency groups. You can click on that too, like the Vanguard group that operate in the same theater. Historically, the U.S. has deployed official security forces into Russian territory during specific interventions, such as the American Expeditionary Forces in Siberia and North Russia during the Russian Civil War. And then there's another link there, American Expeditionary Force, Siberia. Common mistakes foreigners make. What is considered impolite in Russia? You gotta keeping gloves on while shaking hands. Shaking hands across a threshold, considered bad luck. Initiating a cheek kiss too soon or in the wrong setting. Over refusing informal greetings in professional environments. A famous Russian saying, live for a century, learn for a century. Live and learn. Lifelong learning ethos in 7 words. Don't cut the branch you're sitting on. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. Most common crime in Russia is fraud. Traffic violations, robbery, forcible seizure. then homicide. In the U.S., number 1 is larceny, theft, most common overall, 72%. 2, motor vehicle theft. 3, burglary. 4, aggravated assault. 5, drug offense. 6, fraud and identity theft. FBI Crime Data Explorer says murder is 18.5, rape 7.5, robbery 19.4, aggravated assault 7.5. You know what you're here to do. The bullies is a know-it-alls. Hate on 'em. Go throw some shit.
Only sealed by what they call SSL and TLS encryption was being harvested. The entry point was embarrassingly mundane. They exploited a known vulnerability in TP-Link routers, a flaw that had a patch available, a patch that millions of users just never applied because updating router firmware ranks somewhere below cleaning the gutters on most people's to-do lists. Hey folks, human beings have managed an impressive feat and turned the entire planet into a plastic buffet. Scientists estimate the average person now consumes about a credit card's worth of plastic every week. We talked about that before. It's in your food, your water, the air you breathe. One study looked at human lung tissue and found plastic particles in 100% of the samples. So apparently breathing is now a delivery system for, industrial waste or something. And it doesn't just pass through your body. These particles cross your gut lining, enter your bloodstream, and they start messing up things that matter. They disrupt your gut bacteria and weaken your immune system, and chemicals like EPA and other things can mimic hormones, mess with your fertility, and even damage your DNA. So you can eat clean and avoid packaged foods and do everything pretty much right. You're still going to be exposed. Plastic is just everywhere. But your gut can actually help you fight back. Kimchi 1 from Bright Core Nutrition contains more than 900 probiotic strains found in kimchi. Some of them have actually been shown to help break down EPA. That means your gut bacteria can help dismantle some of these toxins instead of letting them sit there and cause trouble in your gut. So if you want to try it, you can get 25% off with the code CHUCK by clicking the link in the description. Or, better yet, call them at Brightcore for up to 50% off and free shipping at 888-927-6882. That's 888-927-6882. I use Kimchi 1. I actually like it, and you should too. Check it out. The GRU cast a wide net, indiscriminately compromising routers all across the U.S. and even globally, and then filtered down to the targets that matter: military, government, critical infrastructure. They weren't after your Netflix queue. They were doing triage, sifting through the hall for intelligence gold. And the insidious part is they didn't need to break into classified systems. They just had to wait at the front door of people who had access to those systems. And those people handed over their credentials without ever knowing. This advisory was co-signed by intelligence and security agencies from 16 countries, including Canada, Germany, Estonia, Poland, and Ukraine, which tells you something about the scope of what the GRU was running. This wasn't a targeted espionage operation. It was industrial-scale credential harvesting across the entire Western Alliance. Now hold that thought, because the
There
router
are
story
streams
doesn't
to the
exist in
F-35B
isolation.
or
It's one
the
thread in a
Typhoon
very large, very
FGR4.
deliberate
If it
tapestry
is the
that I've done a lot
FGR4,
of
they will then
reporting
make
on.
their way to
While the FBI was rolling up the
Operational
GRU's
Conversion Unit
router
number 29
network,
Squadron for the
the U.S.
Typhoon.
Secret Service
If
was
it's the
quietly
F-35B,
dismantling
it'll be
something else
207
entirely.
Squadron,
And the
which
timing
is,
should make
again,
your
an
skin crawl.
operational conversion
We talked
unit
about it
and
last September when they
RAF
found it,
Forum.
just
And
as
that's for
close to
both
150
Royal
world
Navy
leaders were
and
descending
Royal
on
Air
Manhattan
Force
for the UN
207
General
Squadron.
Assembly. The Secret Service was pulling apart a massive hidden telecom network across the New York area,
So they don't
more than
go from
300
this to
SIM
fighter
servers,
jets. This is a
packed with over
multi-engine,
100,000
so
active SIM
C-17
cards spread
and the
across at least 5
A400
states
for the example.
within 35 miles of the
OCU
United
for that
Nations.
is
That's a
24
problem.
Squadron.
Secret Service's special agent in charge of the New York field office said this infrastructure was so powerful it could have sent an encrypted, anonymous text message to
So
every
it's all
single
structured.
human being in the United
It
States
all
within
has a
12 minutes.
process.
So think about that for a second. Every American in
Right,
12 minutes, anonymous, untraceable.
Let me just
Could have
grab the
overwhelmed
camera.
networks by sending up to 30 million text messages per minute.
Well, I can.
That's a denial service attack capable of blacking out cellular communication all across New York City. In New York, investigators found the system could have flooded cell towers with so much traffic that 911 calls might not connect, while police, fire, and EMS struggled to coordinate. Hospitals depend on cellular links for patient monitoring. Transportation systems use it for logistics. Power grids, water systems, financial networks, all tied to connected devices that quietly run in the background. One well-timed activation and the city hosting the world's leaders goes dark, silent, and blind in the middle of a moment of maximum international exposure. The Secret Service described this as a well-funded, highly organized enterprise, possibly run by a nation-state. It probably was, because it was tens of millions of dollars worth of equipment. But no arrests have been made. The forensic investigation is still ongoing. Nobody's officially named the country, but let's do a little common sense math. Who has the motive, who has the resources, the technical sophistication, and the long track record of pre-positioning destructive infrastructure inside the United States before they need it? Who just got caught running 100,000 compromised routers through American networks? The answer isn't complicated. The U.S. intelligence community's 2025 annual threat assessment identifies Russia as a persistent, malicious cyber and critical infrastructure threat. And they note that Moscow's unique strength is the practical experience it has integrating cyber attacks with wartime military action, and almost certainly amplifying its potential to focus combined impact on U.S. targets in a conflict. In other words, Russia doesn't just probe our defenses, it maps them, compromises them, and it pre-positions assets to weaponize them the moment the strategic calculation changes. And that day may be coming. The routers, the SIM farms, the undersea cable mapping that Russian marine research vessels and commercial fishing fleets have been collecting around European and American critical infrastructure. This is what a nation that intends to fight you looks like when it's not yet ready to pull the trigger. They are shaping the battlefield as we speak. The International Institute for Strategic Studies documented over 50 sabotage events in Europe from 2022 to 2025 that were likely linked to Russia. Arson attacks on warehouses, rail sabotage in Poland, GPS jamming that's causing aircraft to deviate off course across the Baltic, a drone incursion over Poland, we saw that in September 2025 that triggered a NATO Article 4 consultation and forced airport closures across the region. Russia calls this hybrid warfare. The more honest name for it is what it is, slow motion war being waged against the West, while a portion of the Western audience applauds the aggressor. Because this is where it gets personal for a lot of people that are watching this. There's a narrative that's been carefully cultivated, especially inside conservative and Christian media, that Russia's somehow a natural ally, a defender of traditional values, a Christian nation, standing up against Western decadence. It's a masterpiece of information warfare, and millions of well-meaning Americans have swallowed it whole. The Justice Department has charged 2 employees of Russian state media, RT, in a scheme that funneled nearly $10 million through shell entities to a Tennessee-based media company that contracted with prominent conservative online influencers, including Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, and Benny Johnson, to produce content explicitly designed to amplify U.S. domestic divisions and weaken American opposition to Russia's war in Ukraine. These weren't fringe voices. Together, the 6 influencers involved had more than 7 million YouTube subscribers and 7 million followers on X. That's bigger than CNN in many ways. The influencers say that they didn't know about it. Maybe they didn't. But here's what the internal Kremlin planning documents say, and this is worth hearing directly. Russian operatives explicitly noted there was no point in trying to generate pro-Russian sentiment among Americans. Instead, the strategy was to exploit existing political polarization, specifically instructing operatives to spread the view that the U.S. should address domestic issues instead of wasting money in Ukraine. They weren't trying to make you love Russia. They were trying to make you distrust each other. And it worked to a large extent. Russian intelligence agents set up Facebook groups catering to right-wing Christian demographics, black nationalist groups, and Muslim groups simultaneously. And they were flooding each with content specifically designed to drive a wedge between that group and the rest of American society. This is not the behavior of a nation that shares your values. This is the behavior of a nation running a psychological demolition operation against your country, your church, and your community. Vladimir Putin is not a Christian statesman. He's a former KGB officer who runs a kleptocratic petro-state. He orders the assassination of dissidents in foreign countries. He conscripts his own citizens and tricks citizens of other countries into a meat grinder war. And he funds influence operations designed to corrode the social fabric of the nation he views as his primary adversary. The Orthodox imagery is a costume. The traditionalist rhetoric is a weapon. And the Americans amplifying it, whether they know it or not, are handing Moscow explicitly what it means. The fix for the router problem is simple. Update your stupid firmware. Change the default username and password. Disable remote management from the internet. Replace end-of-life devices. 5 minutes of maintenance and you're out of the GRU's net. The fix for the propaganda problem is harder. But it starts with the same basic principle. Stop accepting default settings. Your router came pre-configured to be vulnerable. So did the media ecosystem a lot of us grew up with. So, update it. Verify what you're told, and recognize that a foreign intelligence service with a century of experience manufacturing reality is not going to announce itself before it reconfigures your beliefs. The FBI disrupted the router network. The Secret Service dismantled the SIM phone. Both operations were wins for America, but Russia doesn't quit. It retasks, rebuilds, and reinserts. The next version of every one of these operations is already in development. The only question is whether we're paying attention. So for more on everything else we're tracking, head over to chuckholton.com. Supporters over there get access to extended content, early releases, and our monthly phone calls. So hope to see you there. Stay tuned.
Chase Hughes, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Sean. Good to be here.
It's good to have you. Love the stuff you put out.
Thanks, man.
So, yeah. So I'm pumped about this, and man, you made it on short notice. Thank you. Perfect.
I hope we're all good. And of course, don't forget to hit the like button. Ladies, Sheds, Teddy Bears, do give us some support. Let's get this stream out there. Not many people know about Cranwell and how important it is. And it's a great place if you just want to do a bit of practicing with your photography, really, because it is an extremely busy station. But I don't think I've come here with the weather been this bad before, so let's see how it goes. ride this out till about, I'd say about 10 o'clock. It should be fingers crossed in the clear, in the blue, in the blue. If we can hang in there till about 10 o'clock, then we're looking good for the day, I think. But the weather does its thing. Like I said, it will be in the clear from, I'd say, 10 o'clock local, so that is something to hang in there while I can. So we've got plenty of
in the West that supports policies, believes in policies. So we all know by now that there is this weird conventional wisdom in the West that supports policies, believes in policies that could lead to our destruction. Mass migration, particularly from individuals and peoples coming from certain different cultures, yes, often from Islamic countries that have, by and large, generalizing, not speaking about everyone, but in general, come from countries and cultures that have very different values to the West. And on so many fronts, whether it's just crazy economic policies that seem to prioritize favouring those who aren't in work, and the suicidal empathy that Gadsad talks about. You know, there's nothing wrong with empathy, but if it's going to potentially destroy your civilization, that is bad, that's dangerous. How has this happened? Why is it that so many minds in the West have been infected by Gadsad's Gadsad's described suicidal empathy? By the way, I've actually booked in an interview with Gadsad soon, so really looking forward to that. If you have any particular things you'd like me to ask him, write something in the comment section and I'll try to take a look at that. But I think Douglas Murray here hits the nail on the head. This is his speech at the American Freedom Alliance. I'll put the link to it in the video description. I think here he captures the root of why so many people have what they believe to be moral points of view that could lead to the destruction of Western nations. I think this is what it boils down to. Have a watch.
The question I always had about immigration was why, not why people are coming. I mean, for the strange death of Europe, I was in migrant camps across North Africa and the Middle East and across southern Mediterranean Europe, and I never thought, why are people coming? I mean, that was obvious. You know, it's very obvious. I mean, if you're a young Tunisian man, or you're not got any hope, you're not got any prospects in your life, your government doesn't do anything for you. Yeah, it makes sense to try to cross the Mediterranean. I never thought that was an interesting question. The interesting question I always thought was, why do we allow this? And that was really the question underneath the strange death of Europe, was why would we do this to ourselves? And the Madison Crowds also addressed some of that with some of the social issues that have been deranging people in recent years. But the war on the West is really the thing underneath all of those questions, which is, again, why we do this to ourselves. Everybody here who's a student of history knows the famous Toynbee quote that civilizations don't die by murder, they die by suicide. It's the odd suicidalism of the West, in fact the self-hatred in particular in the West, that really has been the single thing that I've found most striking throughout my own adult life. Let me give you an example. I was only born in 1979, but I was born in a culture which revered heroism. That was the principal thing that we admired, was heroism. There were follow-ons from that. We admired stoicism. One of the phrases, maybe Perlman knows this, that one of the phrases what one grew up with in England was "mustn't grumble." I can't think when I last heard someone say that. Now it's just grumble away. Get a Netflix series and pull up a chair. But we were brought up with the idea that the world has miseries. People have their own private tragedies. Don't add to them unnecessarily. Try to improve their day and go about your own day in as good a fashion as you can, and bear things and cope with suffering and much more. And that has entirely changed in my own lifetime, which, as I say, doesn't feel that long so far, but it's entirely changed, and the system has moved from an admiration of heroism, of courage, into an admiration of victimhood, where, bizarrely, people want to have a positive Olympics of victimhood. I noticed this starting some years ago. You could tell it when somebody in an audience, not an audience as intelligent, sensible as this one, but other audiences, you would have when people just put up their hand and they'd say, speaking as... if somebody says speaking as, you know, everything that comes after it is going to be rubbish. Speaking as an indigenous woman of... I don't care. It doesn't affect the quality of your question. The quality of the question is in the question. That's it. Everything else is irrelevant. But that's not the case anymore. Everything is about the person's characteristics. Nothing to do with the content of the character. All just to do with the characteristics. And this, of course, in modern America in particular, in corporate America, everywhere, is the great disease that has rotted through. You have the DEI or DIE problem, where every single corporation in America, and I used to think, well, this will all stop, this insanity will stop in the universities, for instance. You know, there were two jokes that conservatives like me used to tell that ended up the joke being on us. One of them was, oh well, all of these kids are gonna rack up debt in their, you know, BA in lesbian dance theory at Berkeley, and they're going to go out into the world, and that's going to wake them up. When they get out of there into the marketplace, they're going to... No! The joke was on us. There were masses of jobs for these people. They all went into HR. They made everyone else have to agree with them.